Coming up on this episode, the Western Conference standings just blew open even further with just 10 days remaining in the regular season. Plus, why Golden State's upcoming back-to-back against the Lakers and Nuggets could show us the real version of Jimmy Butler and give us an idea of the Warriors' playoff credentials. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. A little bit of an impromptu episode here as it's late Wednesday night US time, Thursday afternoon for me in Australia. I've just gone sicko mode a little bit and just watched the entirety of Spurs Nuggets at Ball Arena, despite the fact the Nuggets were without their 5 starters and obviously the Spurs without Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox. The Spurs grab a 113-106 victory. I got to see Dario Saric play first half minutes for the first time in forever. Former Warrior, shout out to him, done absolutely nothing for the Nuggets this season. But obviously it comes on the back and Denver's decision to rest all their key guys, Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Porter, Brown, list goes on. But obviously those 5 starters, the decision to do that stems from the absolutely classic battle between themselves and the Minnesota Timberwolves on Tuesday after the Warriors beat the Grizzlies. I sat down, watched the end of that game, and it was wild, absolutely wild. The fact that Nikola Jokic had a 61-point triple-double, basically forced overtime and then forced double overtime with late buckets in each period there. 61-point triple-double, and yet Russell Westbrook's absolute mind-boggling meltdown at the end was just ridiculous and Minnesota came away with the victory. We saw the Nuggets up 1, Russ gets the steal and then decides that he still wants to take a layup even though he didn't have to shoot the ball whatsoever. Misses, ball goes down the other end, and then Russ fouls Nickeil Alexander-Walker on a corner 3, sends him to the line with 0.1 on the clock. And obviously he goes 2 out of 3 and the Timberwolves escape double overtime victory by 1. An absolutely ridiculous game, an absolutely ridiculous final sequence from Russell Westbrook. That was legitimately like one of the worst endings to a game from an individual player that I've seen in a while. It was just the meltdown from him individually. Deserved all the criticism that came his way. And we know, Russ is Russ sometimes, but even by his standards and some of the silly stuff he can do, that was just horrific. But obviously Denver's decision, like Nikola Jokic played over 53 minutes, their decision to rest all their guys for this matchup against the Spurs, a team that isn't looking to win at all, that, if the Nuggets even came out with a couple of their guys, they probably would have won this game. They basically tanked the game in order to prepare for Friday's meeting with Golden State. Now, that could prove to be the right decision. The Nuggets have a great recent record against the Warriors. They've won 9 regular season games in a row, whatever. They could come out at Chase Center on Friday and easily beat the Warriors, and everyone will look back and think that's the right decision. However, their decision to rest their guys and ultimately lose this game to the Spurs does open up the Western Conference standings in a way that continues to be absolutely crazy with only 10 days remaining in the regular season. So here's a look at the updated standings. The Nuggets have now fallen to 4th, right? That's their 30th loss of the season. They are now 47-30. They're now behind the Los Angeles Lakers, who are 46-29. Of course, the Warriors have a back-to-back against both teams coming up here in the next 48 hours. And you got the Warriors in 5th at 44-31, right? There are 3 losses between the 3rd seed Lakers and the 8th seed LA Clippers, who are currently, as I record this, playing the New Orleans Pelicans. You'd assume they will get the win. So you got the Lakers 3rd, 46-29, the Nuggets 4th, 47-30. They've only got 5 games remaining now. The Warriors are 44-31. Again, we'll face the Lakers and Nuggets in the next 48 hours. The Grizzlies obviously pushing down to 6th after losing to the Warriors yesterday, 44-32. The Timberwolves are 44-32, and the Clippers, assuming they win, are also 44-32. So the stakes for this upcoming back-to-back from a Golden State perspective were already through the roof. But the fact the Nuggets rested their guys today makes it even bigger, because all of a sudden you beat the Lakers tomorrow, you beat the Nuggets and sweep this back-to-back and go 2-0. The Golden State Warriors, as I sit here, if they do that, could have a legitimately realistic view of the 3rd seed in the Western Conference standings, which is wild. Okay, it was the end of January, 2 months ago, where the Warriors were 11th. They finished January 11th in the Western Conference standings. They are now in a position they could be looking at the 3 seed within 48 hours here. Not be necessarily the 3rd seed, but have a legitimate, realistic shot. As stunning as it sounds, they could have a legitimate, realistic shot at the 3 seed. Okay, but with the tightness of these things, they lose even one of the upcoming 2 games, they could be back in 7th or 8th and looking at the playing tournament again, which is just absolutely wild. And I tweeted it out earlier today. It is crazy, absolutely crazy to me that the playing tournament is a thing. Now, I get it. I get like the viewership numbers and the extra money that creates for the NBA. Like, I get it. And it is, I think, for fans of teams that are not involved in the playing tournament, it's an exciting few games to watch, right, before the playoffs. Like, I get it. It's fine. But you look at the difference here in quality between the top 8 seeds, who are all now only 3 losses apart between 3rd and 8th in the standings right now. You look at 3 through 8, and then you look at the Dallas Mavericks, the Sacramento Kings, and the Phoenix Suns, who are kind of all vying for that 9-10 spot. It would be a travesty. It would be disgusting if we saw some ridiculous, shocking results in the playing tournament, which can happen in one-off elimination games, right? That can happen. If all of a sudden one of those 3 teams, the Kings, the Suns, or the Mavericks, if one of those 3 teams, obviously one of them will have to play one of the 7 or 8 seed in the final playing game. If one of those teams end up in the playoffs, it would be a travesty, because right now there is such a gap in quality between the top 8 and then those other 3 that it just makes the playing tournament really ridiculous. Because right now, all these 8 teams should be looking at, okay, we have secured a playoff berth. Now it's just about fighting it out for, who plays who in the first round of the playoffs, right? And moving forward from there. Instead, these teams have got to look at, hey, it might actually be advantageous for us to finish 7th and play the Rockets in the first round. However, that would mean going through the playing tournament, which is a scary proposition. And you don't want to, we've spoken about on the post-game lives that I've done, you don't want to mess around. Like, you don't want to leave it up to the NBA gods where, perhaps in a one-off, or playing tournament game, there's an injury or there's some foul trouble or the refs do something stupid and all of a sudden you're eliminated, right? On the second chance. Obviously, you're going to have the first chance of the 7v8 game, but then one of these top 8 teams, and right now, it could be anyone between 3 and 8. Really, the Nuggets deciding to rest their guys today, they've brought themselves back to the pack. And so any of these teams could be facing one of the Mavericks, the Kings. The Kings lost to the Wizards today, for goodness sake. They lost to the Wizards. The Suns haven't been able to make up basically any ground on the Mavericks, who have been missing all their guys recently. These 3 teams, no good. And yet one of them will face one of these really good top 8 teams in a one-off game to be the 8th seed. That's ridiculous to me. It's easy for me to say this as a fan of one of the teams that are in the top 8. But this is why the playing tournament kind of sucks. And I get it. I get it's a good thing that it allows more teams to have a shot at the playoffs. And therefore, if you look at those teams, Mavs, Suns, Kings, they would have otherwise thrown the season in by now. And yet there's still something to play for. Obviously, they could still, create a shock here and move through to the playoffs when they otherwise previously, up until before the playing tournament, their season would be over already. Okay, so I get it. It creates a little bit more interest. It creates a little bit more competitiveness at this point of the season than what you otherwise would have had in the past. But there is such a gulf in the quality between the top 8 teams and those 3 other teams now that it is ridiculous that one of the top 8 are going to have to play one of those other 3 teams in a one-off elimination game. Yes, it'll be on their home floor, but in a one-off elimination game where who knows what can happen. Again, BS refereeing decisions, an injury, some foul trouble, who knows what can happen, right? I talked about it yesterday. Like, you face the Mavericks, AD, dominates the Warriors, right? He could go for 40 and 15. Who knows? You play the Kings, DeRozan, Levine, maybe they can be dangerous in a one-off game. You face the Suns, KD's back from his current ankle injury. Devin Booker, that's a troublesome duo there that could do anything against any team in a one-off game. This is why we have an 82 game regular season, to sort out who are the best teams consistently. And yet we're still going to face a situation where one of the top 8 teams are going to have to play one of those other 3 teams in a one-off elimination game. To me, that's wild. It is truly wild, and it's disappointing, but it's the reality of where we face. And the Warriors, the stakes for the rest of the season, and particularly the next 48 hours with this upcoming back-to-back against the Lakers and Nuggets, they just got bigger by the fact that Denver decided to rest their guys today. Because now, stunningly, the Warriors have a legitimate look at the 3 seed, yet could also finish as low as 8. And the same can be said for all these teams, right? And I think, tie-break situations are going to come into it heavily. We know the Warriors play the Clippers last game of the regular season. That's going to be a huge factor here. So, I mean, it's all to play for. And it's really interesting to me that, like, the Warriors right now, they have to play every single game as if it's their last and go all out. We saw that yesterday against the Grizzlies. The stars came out to play, right? Steph goes for 52. Jimmy goes for 27. Draymond has a triple-double, right? That was a playoff type game, that one. And yet the Nuggets still had kind of the luxury of, hey, we can afford to rest all our guys. Yes, they went to double overtime yesterday, so I completely understand that. But they could have just rocked up and beaten the Spurs today quite comfortably, even off that double overtime game. And instead they said, we're going to take like our free pass here. We're going to have the luxury to rest all of our guys ahead of Friday's game against the Warriors. We're going to back ourselves in to win that game and continue moving forward in our last 5 games and secure a top 4 spot for home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. They've backed themselves in to do that, but they've also increased the risk. They've lost their margin for error because now they've fallen to the 4th seed and they're only 1 loss behind the Warriors. They're only 2 losses behind the Grizzlies, the Timberwolves, and the Clippers. So this is crazy. This is crazy stuff right now in the Western Conference standings. I want to move on to this upcoming back-to-back. And I'm reliving yesterday's game against the Grizzlies, right? Great win for the Warriors. Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, huge. Moses and Pods had big plays late. Still crazy to me how Steph Curry had 11 threes and 45 points entering the 4th quarter. The game was tied at 103. Through all the first 3 quarters, through all of Steph's brilliance, the Warriors did not go to the 4th with a lead, despite his 11 threes and 45 points throughout the first three quarters. That's crazy. And to me, I was nervous throughout the game, right? I thought the Warriors are going to waste this Curry game because they're not up by enough. Even at halftime, he had 8 threes and 32 points, only up 8 themselves. Thought they're going to waste this Curry game. And I think a previous iteration of Golden State before the trade deadline might have lost that game, might have wasted an all-time great Steph performance and lost that game and pushed themselves back down into the play-in tournament range. But instead, following the trade deadline, they've got Jimmy Butler. They're now 18-2 with Steph and Jimmy. And in the 4th quarter, yes, Steph drew all the headlines, he's 52 points, but Jimmy was the leading scorer in the game in the 4th quarter. When both teams actually started to struggle to put up points in the 4th, was it like 33-22 4th quarter, 32-23 4th quarter or something like that. And, both teams started struggling. The Warriors got to 32 points, but some of that came late, when they were getting fouled and going to the free throw line, whatever else. Both teams started struggling a bit offensively, right? Started getting a bit tired. This is what happens at such a high intensity playoff level basketball kind of thing. And Jimmy Butler was the one. 10 points, 4th quarter. Got to the free throw line 6 times, or three separate times. Took 6 free throws in the last 2.5 minutes, right? First one could have actually been an and one where he was, I think, fouled by Aldama. It was a little pick and roll with Steph. Steph found him on the roll, goes up, basically makes the and one, gets fouled, but then they disallow the basket because he touches the net. Right decision. I'm not complaining about that. That was the right decision. But if he just didn't grab the net, would have been an and one. And then a couple of possessions later, game still in the balance. And bit of a broken play. He ends up with the ball and then just a really clever high IQ fake, draws Jaren Jackson into contesting. Jaren Jackson fouls. Jaren Jackson fouls out, so he's basically out of the game for the last, I think it was minute and 50 seconds or something like that. Butler goes to the free throw line, makes 2 free throws. He goes 12 of 12 for the game, has his Warrior scoring high of 27 points. And I'm thinking about, okay, this is why the Warriors are different, right? This is why you go and get Jimmy Butler, because instead of relying on mainly perimeter stuff with Steph down the stretch, which can come and go, like Steph can often be really clutch and make big shots, but you're living and dying by the three, right? And you're living and dying by one specific aspect. As now, it's like, okay, you can live and die by Steph, but if you're starting to die by that a little bit, and he cooled off in the fourth quarter, I think he was 1 of 5 from 3 in the fourth, then now you've got an alternative to go to with Jimmy. And this is why you make the trade. And this is why the Warriors are so much better. It's why you feel more comfortable as a fan in the closing minutes, because it's not all Steph chucking threes or stuff like that. It's, okay, we can actually get the ball to Jimmy inside. He can make layups. He can go to the free throw line. This is why, you do the trade from a Golden State perspective, and why it's been so good. Again, they're 18-2 with Steph and Jimmy. But I'm looking at this upcoming back-to-back, and it's not just about the standings for me, and I spoke about this yesterday on the post-game live. It's not about the standings, but this upcoming back-to-back will, I think, really give us an indication of where the Warriors' playoff credentials are. Because if they can win these two games against the Lakers and the Nuggets, then I think we have to start having a different conversation about where they can get to in the playoffs. Right now, are they a championship contender to me? Still not really, okay? Maybe they can reach the Western Conference Finals, but to me, these next two games are huge. And I think we're going to get a real idea of who the actual Jimmy Butler is, because there's been a lot of talk recently about whether or not playoff Jimmy can still be a thing, whether he can activate that. Well, he's going to have to activate it, and that's going to have to gather steam before the playoffs actually arrive, because this is the playoffs for the Warriors. They need to secure a top 6 seed, right? They are going all out. We saw that yesterday. The Stars came out to play, and the Stars are going to come out to play in LA tomorrow. You've got Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. You've got LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Okay, 4-star level players. And to me, I want to see, is Jimmy Butler, of that quartet, is he a distant fourth? Because I think a lot of people would look at it and think, okay, there's Steph, LeBron, and Luka, but then there's kind of daylight, then there's Jimmy, right? And then, like, in fairness, like, Austin Reeves is developing into a potential all-star player. Draymond is still, his favorite now for depoy. Like, he's still probably, when things really matter the most, Draymond might still be the best defender in the league. So I'm not trying to outcast Austin Reeves or Draymond, but to me, it's like those four guys. And again, maybe people think, particularly non-Warrior fans, would think you can't really put Jimmy in the same conversation as Steph, Luka, and LeBron, right? I want to see tomorrow. I want to see tomorrow, is he a distant fourth among that quartet? Or can he have the same impact or a similar impact than those three other guys? Because to me, the Warriors will enter this game against the Lakers having lost all three of their matchups with Los Angeles earlier in the season. In two of those matchups, Steph went for 38 and 37 points. And to me, it's always felt like Steph's been pushing uphill, that he's entered a war with an army that is far less potent than what he sees on the other side. And of course, the Lakers were different to, the Lakers were different, or are different, to those three matchups previously. They've got Luka freaking Doncic now, right? They had Anthony Davis. But even like AD is a star level player. And I think when you look at it, like, let's say Wiggs was obviously the Warriors' second best offensive player. Even if you want to put Kuminga in the conversation, whoever that second best player for Golden State was offensively, I think you looked at it and thought, okay, there's Steph and there's LeBron, there's AD, and then there is a huge, huge, huge gap to whoever Golden State's second best offensive player is. Whether it's Wiggins, whether it's Kuminga. You could probably say Austin Reeves is a better offensive player than Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. So you could have argued that the Lakers had three of the best four offensive players on the floor. And so to me, it always felt like in those matchups, as competitive as they were, like, I think the Lakers won them by a combined 20 points. So over three meetings, they were fairly competitive, particularly the one back on, was it Christmas Day, when Reeves makes the layup at the buzzer to win. As competitive as they were, it always felt to me as a Warrior fan thinking, Steph's really outgunned here. He just doesn't have the necessary support. And it feels like that in a lot of games, right? Or it did feel like that before the trade deadline. And that's exactly why they go out and get Butler, to give Steph more support. But now this star duo that Golden State now had, this is going to be perhaps the biggest test. To me, the game against the Grizzlies yesterday was the biggest game of the season because of the implications of the standings and what a win would do as opposed to a loss. To me, this game tomorrow against the Lakers is the biggest game of the season based on what we think the Warriors can be. Because if they go out at crypto.com, take down LeBron and Luka, Steph has a big game, Jimmy has a big game, then again, I think we're going to have to start having a different conversation about whether this team can be a championship contender or not. Because I'm ready. If they come out and win tomorrow, I'm almost ready to put them in the conversation. Okay, I'm not there yet. But this is how big this game against the Lakers is going to be. And I want to specifically see the real Jimmy Butler. Is the real Jimmy Butler the one that we've been seeing over the last, since he's come to the Warriors, right, in early February, where he can get you 18 to 25 points kind of thing, or 50, anywhere between 15, 25 points, and he can get his teammates involved and be a really impactful piece, as we've seen with the record. But does he have that next level? Does he have that playoff Jimmy, which is a guy like, hey, there's Steph Curry, there's Luka Doncic, there's LeBron James on the floor, and yet, you know what? I might be the best player. And I think he should be going into like a matchup like that thinking, heck, there's no gap between those three guys and me. I'm part of the conversation. I'm part of that quartet. Okay, I can have just as much impact on the game than those three other guys. And that's what I want to see, right? Not only tomorrow, but then the Nuggets, you got Jokic and Murray. Okay, as far as duos in the NBA go, to me, like, I think LeBron Luka might be the most feared duo in the league, right? Just of like the pedigree those guys have, right? And just like you like have sweats just thinking about having to go up against those two guys, particularly come the playoffs. And the Warriors, again, crucially, like looking at this back to back, they might have to face the Lakers or the Nuggets in the playoffs. Okay, so again, this is why it's going to give us an idea of where this team can potentially get to. Can this team take down the Lakers and the Nuggets in the playoffs? Because I know from you guys, I know from myself, I've read your guys' comments on post-game lives, like you guys don't want to play the Lakers or the Nuggets. Okay, and it's not about, running from those guys, but like there is a legitimate thought that, hey, they might be slightly better than the Warriors and they're clearly a far less favorable opponent than a young, inexperienced team in Houston who still have some offensive concerns, and a team like the Grizzlies that are just going through a lot of stuff right now, including recently firing their head coach. We're going to get a real understanding here of the Warriors. I think we're going to get a real understanding of Jimmy Butler, because this is when playoff Jimmy needs to start coming to fruition here. Not the guy who has 15, 16 points, doesn't really look for his own shot, tries to bring his teammates into the game. No, this is like playoff style basketball now. And we saw yesterday, as I said before, against the Grizzlies, it's like come the playoffs, when things matter more, that's when the stars arrive, right? That's when the games start getting dictated by the best players on the floor. And yesterday, the Warriors won the game because their three veteran stars wheeled them across the line. Steph had 52. Jimmy had 27, 10 in the fourth. Draymond has a triple-double. Ja Morant, Memphis star, great. 36 points, terrific. Didn't have the second or third guy. JJJ, Desmond Bane, they were okay. But the Warriors had the three of the best four players on the floor. Okay, this is what it comes down to. When things matter the most, the stars come out to play. They're the ones to dictate the games. Can Jimmy Butler be part of that quartet? Or is he a distant fourth and we're going to get to the game tomorrow and Steph is still a little bit outgunned going up against LeBron and Luka? Fascinating. Looking forward to it. So thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in. I really appreciate it, whether on YouTube or via your podcast feed. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. And follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. I'll be back. After all I've just said is a kind of a preview for the Warriors-Lakers. I'll be back for a post-game live tomorrow to dissect it all. It's sure to be fascinating. Let's hope for a positive result from a Golden State perspective. Again, not just because of the current standings and where they could potentially get to or where they could fall to if they lose, but also in terms of their playoff credentials and how we start talking about them as a legitimate playoff threat. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. It's going to be a huge 48 hours of sport for me. We've got the Warriors back-to-back coming up against the Lakers and Nuggets. Collingwood, Carlton, AFL, Thursday night footy tonight. Thoroughly looking forward to that one. A little bit nervous. Collingwood Carlton, probably bigger than any rivalry I can think of in the NBA. It's I tweeted or retweeted something about it on X/Twitter earlier today, which kind of gave me goosebumps. It's the biggest rivalry I think I know in sport from a team perspective. It's absolutely huge. So hopefully the Pies can get a win over the Blues, because I think it means more than just the 4 points. But thanks again, guys. Hopefully you guys can tune in to the post-game live tomorrow after the matchup with the Lakers.